Is it possible that Subject 1138, Starkiller as seen in The Force Unleashed 2, is not a clone whatsoever? Did Vader lie not only to him, but to everybody? So welcome back to the channel, Curious Traveler. The archives have been expecting you. At the very end of The Force Unleashed, Galen Marek sacrificed himself to save the rebellion. Taking the full might of Sidious's lightning, Galen would succumb to these injuries. For the longest time he was believed to be dead, only to be philosophically resurrected in the form of a clone, Subject 1138. It was said that Vader went through many clones in order to engineer the perfect one, but all of them failed except for Subject 1138. The stronger and more obedient clone would be the new Starkiller, the first great success of Vader's experiments. However, several things did not add up here, and we believe that there are internal Easter eggs in the lore that indicate that Subject 1138 is not a clone, but is the actual Galen Marek, the original. The most obvious piece of evidence is the opinion of Jedi Master Kota. Kota was blinded in his duel with Galen while he was still Vader's apprentice, but Kota would go on to train his senses to be his new eyes. He would actually get to know Galen Marek as a person without his eyes, relying on the boy's signature in the Force. Whenever the clone of Starkiller met with Kota on Cato Nemoidia, Kota was completely convinced that he was speaking to the real Galen Marek. Even when Starkiller pushed back against him and insisted that he was a clone, Kota never once doubted the boy's real identity. He had the exact same signature in the Force that the original Galen had, and Yoda once said to a squad of Jango Fett clones that even though that they all had the same face, that within the Force, they were all unique beings. Even though Yoda said this in canon, we believe that it still holds water for Star Wars legends. So if Starkiller was truly a clone, then his Force signature would have been different, especially with the modifications that Vader allegedly made to him. Kota didn't have eyes, and therefore could not be deceived by appearance, and the Force never lies. The General remained adamant that this was the truth. Later in the game, when Starkiller asked Kota if he believes that he is still a clone, the Jedi simply stated that he was starting to think that it didn't matter, a reference to how identical Starkiller and Galen really were. Our second piece of in-game evidence is actually Starkiller's name, or should we say the designation 1138. In the very first game, Vader betrays and stabs Galen whenever Sidious finds out about his existence. The Emperor commanded Vader to kill his secret protege, resulting in Galen being hurled out of the window of Vader's Star Destroyer and left in the vacuum of space. But Vader had once again swindled his master, rescued Marek before he was completely dead. Galen would awake screaming in a mobile research center, a modified Star Destroyer known as the Empirical. After speaking with the transmission of Lord Vader, Galen finally decided to break from his master. Now, if you listen carefully during this stage in the game, there is a special transmission played out over the loudspeaker on the vessel that says exactly this: Security breach in Sector 9. Subject 1138 has escaped. Again, this is the first game, and here, the original Galen Marek is referred to as 1138. A designation that was supposed to be set aside for the only successful Galen Marek clone. There is hardly a chance that this is coincidental. Nothing with the Force ever is. The developers of the game would later comment about this, saying that they were inserting this reference, and they could have very easily chosen a different random assortment of numbers, but that they chose the designation 1138 because it was important to the original Starkiller. This could, with Kota's opinion, and all the evidence there, hint that this could be more than a simple Easter egg, that there is a deeper conspiracy with Lord Vader right around the center. The Vader in the Force Unleashed games is raw strength personified. He is ruthless, and he is cunning. Not that Vader isn't exhibited this trait in the past, but for many other appearances, Vader is straightforward, acting as a battering ram to his enemy. But this time, his enemy is his own master and his apprentice. In The Force Unleashed, Vader is sneaky, he's deceitful, and manipulative. He's always 2 steps ahead of everyone else, and has hidden motives around every corner. He's a lot like Sidious in this regard. He lies to Galen about as often as he tortures him. All of this is to serve Vader's ultimate goal: to kill Palpatine and become the new Emperor. Vader has decided to go completely against everything he stood for, which is a face-to-face challenge in an effort to undermine the ever-watchful Sidious. We talked before about the plans for the Force Unleashed 3 game, how even though Starkiller and Vader were meant to team up, the majority of the story would center around whether or not Vader could be trusted or not. We bring all of this up to say that the real question is, what if Vader concocted a gigantic scheme in order to ensure that Galen would remain loyal? From here on out, we're entering into theory territory. I don't doubt that Vader definitely tried to clone Starkiller for the purposes he intended. He wanted Starkiller's power and skill without the rebellion, emotion, and his unpredictability. However, I now believe that Vader completely failed at this, and failed at no matter what he tried, until he got the successful Dark Apprentice that we see in the dark side version of the game. But this is not the game's ending. The official ending is the light side variation of the game. So this is what we'll interpret as hardcore concrete lore. I believe that Vader returned to the original Galen Marek, who didn't die to the Emperor's lightning, but had instead been comatose in a bacta tank the entire time. Someone as powerful as Galen definitely had a great chance of surviving even Sidious's Force Lightning. Perhaps if he were left for dead, or near to it, then there was some way that Vader could bring him back once again, just as he did when he threw him into the vacuum of space. Vader was waking him up again and again with a new imperative like he did last time, attempting to wipe the boy of all memories altogether. This would of course fail, which gave the Dark Lord a better idea. He would wake up Galen and have him trained in the Camino cloning facility, convince him that he was a clone. Psychological conditioning was a powerful tool, and one that Vader was familiar with. He would attempt to use drugs to make the subject more obedient, which was why Galen didn't immediately attempt to escape. He received Vader's new training, and was fully convinced of his new life, until his memories continued to plague him, telling him that what Vader was saying was a lie, that it was wrong. While Starkiller never accepted that he was anything more than a clone, he took up the mantle of his previous life and escaped to find his friends. Believing that he was a clone did not stop Galen from searching for a relationship and trying to find his love, Juno. He never stopped to think that he was wrong. He never stopped to think that this was not his life, that it belonged to his original self. But why would he? This was all so natural to him, as natural as his friendship with Kota. When he met with the original general in Kota Nemoidia, he cared deeply about the general's life, and did everything he could to save his Jedi Master. Now meanwhile, Lord Vader fully understood that no matter what, the original Galen Marek would never submit to him. And this could be when he perfected the cloning process for real, and the Dark Apprentice arrives. The clone of Galen that felt nothing for his old life. He was disgusted by weakness, the same way that Vader was, and the way that Vader wanted. In fact, to the rest of the clones in the test tubes, they all had no memories of their past lives whatsoever. They were all completely blank slates, except for 1138, which means that it's likely that this is the real Galen Marek. None of these clones, though, held so much of a candle to Starkiller in the slightest, as he pulverized every single one of them with a force repulse in the novelization, one-shotting all of the clones. The only clone that he really had to worry about was the Dark Apprentice. Galen had nightmarish visions of being killed by this clone, which of course is the non-canon dark side ending. And if the Dark Apprentice is the only successful version of the Starkiller clone in the program, then this would mean that Subject 1138 could be the real Galen Marek. His power certainly does not seem to have been diminished whatsoever. Cloning a Force sensitive is notoriously extremely difficult in all of Star Wars lore, canon, and legends. It's an imperfect process, and it would make sense that Vader would not be successful even with all of the cloning of Camino. Is it possible that Vader lied to this young boy? Palpatine doesn't appear in the second game to say anything to the contrary. But does this evidence that we bring to you today, in the reconstruction of the events that lead into The Force Unleashed 2, make sense? Is Galen Marek Starkiller the same? Although the game insists that Starkiller is a clone, it is left pretty ambiguous, and there is a chance that this is the true Galen Marek. I really like the idea that 1138 is the actual Starkiller, mainly based around Rom Kota's explanation, the fact that through the Force, they're the same being. We had a theory in a previous video that perhaps Galen Marek's essence possessed this clone body, but we wanted to make this video to explore the alternative. What if Vader just lied? What if Galen survived and he was never a clone at all? But we would love to hear your thoughts on this theory down below. And what are your thoughts on the potential of a third Force Unleashed game? Do you want Galen Marek to be a clone or not? And is Vader simply a liar? Thanks so much guys for watching today's video. May the Force be with you, and I'll catch you next time.